Greeting everyone. This is Ali Hassan from Al Hamid Consulting, and this is presentation number 12 in our series of presentations on project management for all. This presentation is on project schedule management. As I mentioned many times before, the primary constraints of any project are scope, time, budget, and quality. Therefore, the duty of the project manager is to manage these constraints and balance between them. In presentation number 11, we talked about managing scope. And today we are going to talk about managing the time, i.e. Schedule management. So what is project schedule management? The definition of the project schedule management, this is taken from PMI, includes the processes required to manage the timely completion of the project. And the project schedule management processes, it has many processes. They are the plan schedule management, then define activities, third one, sequence activities, then the fourth, estimate activity durations, the fifth, develop schedule, and the sixth is the control schedule. In this following figure, it will provide an overview of the project schedule management. So as you can see here, the plan schedule management, define activities, sequence activities, estimate activities, estimate activity durations, develop schedule, and control schedule. And each of these processes has its own inputs and tools and output. And some of these outputs are, the same inputs in other processes. Some of the tools also are used in most of these processes. And the output of any one of these processes can be an input to the other process. Okay, so the key concept of this schedule management, there are few key concepts. The first one is the project schedule and provides a detailed plan that represents how and when the project will deliver the products, services, or results, which are defined in the project scope. And also it serves as a tool for communication, managing stakeholders' expectations, and a basis for performance reporting. The second key concept is that the project management selects a schedule method, such as the critical path method or an agile approach. Then the project-specific data, such as activities, planned dates, durations, resources, dependencies, and constraints, are entered into a schedule tool to create a schedule model for the project. And the result of that work is the project schedule. For smaller projects, defining activities, sequences, sequencing activities, estimating the durations, and developing the schedule model are very tightly linked, that they are viewed as a single process that can be performed by one person over a relatively short period of time, because this is also a costly work. and then you should spend on it as much as the project entitles you to. The last concept, when possible, the detailed project schedule should remain flexible throughout the project to adjust for knowledge gained, increase understanding of the risks, and value-added activities. Therefore, during the project, of course, you will gain more knowledge, and then you understand the risks more than the beginning. Therefore, the schedule has to be need to be flexible in order to be updated in the during the project life cycle. So the first process is the plan schedule management. How do we plan the schedule management? The definition of this process, it is the process of establishing the policies, procedures, and documentation for planning, developing, managing, executing, and controlling the project schedule. The benefit of this process, it provides guidance and direction on how the project schedule will be managed throughout the project. This process is performed once or at predefined points in the project, because some of the processes are done continuously during the project. But this one is done once or at predefined points in the project. The inputs, tools, and techniques are depicted in this figure. So the inputs to this process, the first one is the project charter, the project management plan, and part of it is the scope management plan, the development approach, and the third input is the enterprise environmental factors, and the fourth one is the organizational process assets. And we will talk little about these later on. The tools and techniques used to plan the schedule management are the expert judgment, data analysis, which is part of it is the alternative analysis, and meetings. The output of this process, this is very important, is the schedule management plan. Okay, so now we talk about the inputs and tools and techniques and outputs of this process. And I will touch upon some of them because some of them we talked about before. And if we go into detail on each one of them, it will take a very long time, could be hours. So the first input is the project charter, and we talked about the project charter before. The project charter defines the summary milestone schedule that will influence the management of the project schedule. So the project charter has only it defines the major milestones. It doesn't go into details. The second input is the project management plan. The components of the plan which are used here as the scope management plan and the development approach. The scope management plan, we talked about this in presentation number 11. And the development approach, this will help define the scheduling approach, estimating techniques, scheduling tools, and techniques for controlling the schedule. The third input are the enterprise environmental factors. And we know each organization has its own environmental factors. So the first one is the organizational culture and structure. You know, what culture it has and how it is structured. The second is the team resource availability and skills. Are they available internally in the organization, or do you need to get them from outside the organization, and their skills, etc. The fourth one is the scheduling software. Which software is used? You know, is it Microsoft Project or Primavera or some other tools? The fourth one is the commercial databases, such as standardized estimating data, because every company may have its own estimating data, how much the engineer costs and how much this tool or this technician costs the enterprise, and so on. So you have this commercial database in the organization. The fourth input are the organizational process assets. So every organization has also its own assets. The first one is the historical information, a lesson learned from previous projects. Also, we use these to as input to this process. Existing formal and informal schedule development, management, and control related policies and procedures and guidelines, because every organization has its own policies, procedures, and guidelines. The guidelines and criteria for tailoring the organization set of standard processes and procedures to satisfy the specific needs of any project. There also could be templates and forms. And the last one is the monitoring and reporting tools. What monitoring and tools are used by this organization? So these are the input to the first process. The tools and techniques. The first one is the expert judgment. You pick up the brains of the experts, and these could be internal or external. The second tool used is the data analysis, and the data analysis here we use is the alternative analysis. So what do we mean by alternative analysis? It can include determining which schedule methodology to use, or how to combine various methods on the project. It can also include determining how detailed the schedules need to be, because some projects are small or medium or large, so the schedule should be according to the need of each project. The durations of waves for rolling wave planning and how often it should be reviewed and updated. The third tool is the meetings between the project team itself, or meeting the stakeholders and other people to help you to plan the schedule management. The output of this process, and this is very important, is the schedule management plan. So from all these inputs and meetings and all these tools and techniques, we produce the schedule management plan. And we should manage the schedule during the life cycle of the project according to this management plan. The schedule management plan is a component of the project management plan, which we talked about before, that establishes the criteria and the activities for developing, monitoring, and controlling the schedule. So developing, monitoring, and controlling the schedule by using the schedule management plan. And this plan could be formal or informal, highly detailed or broadly framed. It depends on the needs of each project, and includes appropriate control thresholds. The schedule management plan can establish the following. These are the main factors or sections of the project management plan. The first one is the project schedule model development, release and iteration length. This is in agile management. And level, what level of accuracy you use and you need, and units of measurement, organizational procedures, links, and project schedule model maintenance. When do you need to maintain the schedule, and the control, what control thresholds you use, and rules of performance measurements. The rules of performance measurement could be earned value management. And, I think you should, go to online and check this EVM because it's very important technique in project management. So baselines, fixed formula, percent complete. So what rule of performance measurement you use? The second one is the schedule performance measurement, such as schedule variance, SV, and schedule performance index, SPI, which are used to assess the magnitude of variation to the original schedule baseline. And these are very important tools to see if you are, on track or you are missing the deadlines of the activities. Reporting formats. The formats and frequency for the various schedule reports are defined in the project management plan. Okay, the next process, the second one is define activities. Define activities, the definition is the process of identifying and documenting the specific actions to be performed to produce the project deliverables. So we talked about how we plan the schedule management. Now we need to define the activities. The benefit of this process is that it decomposes work packages into schedule activities. Because in every project you have the major work packages, then you decompose them into schedule activities. That provides a basis for estimating, because you cannot estimate a package. It's not very accurate to estimate the duration or cost of the work package unless you decompose it into activities. This process is performed throughout the project. So it is continuous. You need it throughout the life cycle of the project. This figure depicts the inputs, tools, and techniques, and output of this process. And this is reproduced from PMBOK. So the inputs to this process are the project management plan, and then part of it is the schedule management plan, which we produce in the first process. Then the scope baseline, which is done in the scope management plan. We defined and produced the scope baseline. The second one, enterprise environmental factors. And the third one, organizational process assets. The tools and techniques, the expert judgment. As you can see, expert judgment is used in this process also and in the first process. And then decomposition, third one, rolling wave planning, and meetings. Meeting is very important because, as you can see, it's used in most of these, or could be all of them really. The output of this process is, first one is the activity list, activity attributes, milestone list, change request, project management plan updates, which means we update the schedule baseline and the cost baseline, which was done in the cost management section. We talk a little bit about these inputs and outputs and tools. So the inputs, as we said, the schedule management plan, the scope baseline, and we talked about this before. The enterprise environmental factors, some of them are the organizational culture and structure, published commercial information, and project management information system. And we talked about this also before. The organizational process assets, the lesson learned from previous projects, the standardized processes for each company or organization, what templates you have, and existing formal and informal activity planning related policies, procedures, and guidelines. And these were also used in the first process, which is the plan management. The tools and techniques, expert judgment, we talked about this before. Decomposition, which means decompose the work packages into smaller activities in order to easily estimate the durations and estimate the cost. And rolling wave planning and meetings. The output are the activity list. So you have a list of activities in the project. And then the activity attributes, milestone list, change request, project management, updates. I'm just looking at my notes here, if you don't mind. Just want to talk about the tools decomposition. So decomposition is a technique used for dividing and subdividing the project scope and project deliverables into smaller, more manageable parts. Activities represent the effort needed to complete work package. The define activities process defines the final output as activities rather than deliverables as done in the create the work breakdown structure process. The activity list and work breakdown structure and work breakdown structure dictionary can be developed sequentially. Also, I want to talk about the rolling wave planning. That's the third tools and technique. So rolling wave planning is an iterative planning technique in which the work to be accomplished in the near term is planned in detail, while the work further in the future is planned at a higher level, and later on it will be, detailed. It is a form of progressive elaboration applicable to work packages, planning packages, and release planning when using an agile process. And agile process is nearly a new project management process. So, I encourage you to search for it and get more information. The output of this process, as we said, activity list, activity attributes, milestone list, change request, project management plan updates. And we talked about this before, so I don't want to need to go into details. The third process is the sequence of activities. So we said we defined the activities. Now we need to sequence these activities when we do each activity. So the definition of this process is the process of identifying and documenting relationships among these project activities. So we identify them and then we document the relationship, which one comes first, which one comes after each activity, and which one comes last, and so on. So the key benefit of this process, it defines the logical sequence of work to obtain the greatest efficiency given all project constraints. This process is performed throughout the project, so we may need to use it throughout the project. And as you can see from this figure, it shows the inputs and tools and techniques and the outputs of this process. On next slide, we're going to talk about some of these inputs and tools and techniques and output. So as we said, the input to this process, the first one is the project management plan. And we talked about this before. The component of the project management plan is the schedule management plan. and the scope baseline. The second input is the project documents. So the project documents, the activity attributes, may describe a necessary sequence of events or define predecessor or successor relationships, as well as defined lead and lag and logical relationships between the activities. And also we use the activity list, and then the assumption log and milestone list. And the third input is the enterprise environmental factors, the government or industry standards, what project management information system you use, or what scheduling tools you use, and what the organizational work authorization system. Because every organization has its authorization system for any process. The fourth one is the organizational process assets. So the first one is the part of it is the portfolio and program plans and project dependencies and relationships. And what existing formal and informal activity planning related policies and procedures in this organization. And also what templates that can be used to expedite the preparation of networks. Because if the company has its own templates, you use these templates to do your schedule planning and identifying the activities and so on. And the last one is the lesson learned from and the historical data from previous projects. Tools and techniques used for this process. The first one is the precedence diagram management method. This is a technique used for constructing a schedule model in which activities are represented by nodes and are graphically linked by one or more logical relationship to show the sequence in which the activities are to be performed. And there are four logical relationships: finish to start, FS, finish to finish, FF, start to start, SS, and start to finish, SF. And in the next slide, I'm going to show, this shows these relationships. So finish to start, the first one is that this activity B cannot start unless activity A finishes. The second one, finish to finish. Finish to finish, activity B has to finish when activity A are finished. And as an example for this logical relationship, writing a document, this is A. You need to write the document first, and then it's required to finish this process A before you start editing the document. So you need to finish writing the document first, and then to do the editing of the document. The third logical process is relationship is the start to start. So activity B should start when activity A start. And as an example of this relationship, the leveling of concrete, which is the activity B, cannot begin until we pour the foundation, which is activity A, for any structure or building. The fourth logical relationship is the start to finish. So activity, a logical relationship in which a predecessor, which is activity B, cannot finish until a successor activity has started. For example, a new accounts payable system in a company has to start before the old account system can be shut down. You cannot lose your accounting system until you use the new one. and then you finish the old system. We go back to the last slide. The second tools and technique is the dependency determination and integration. So there are some mandatory dependencies in the project. This has to be done, by a law or by government or by any standards in the company. And there could be discretionary dependencies. And there are some external dependencies, internal in the project itself, external to the project, or internal to the project, into the project. The third one is the leads and lags. Some projects has so much lead, and some activities, has so much lags. These are very important relationships. The fourth one is the project management information system. So which software you use to plan and define your schedule. Some people use, as I mentioned before, Microsoft Project. Some people use Primavera, and some other software are used. So the output of this process, the third one, the first output is the project schedule network diagram. This one is a project schedule network diagram, is a graphical representation of the logical relationships, also referred to as dependencies among the project schedule activities. The second output is the project document updates. So as a result of this process, we update the activity attributes, we update the activity lists, and then we update the activities, the assumptions log, and the milestone list. The fourth process is the estimate activity duration. And in this process, we estimate the duration of each activity. So in the previous processes, we defined and we know how many activities we have and what are the relationships between these activities. Now we have to estimate the durations. And when we estimate the durations of the activities, also we can estimate the budget, and so the resources to each activity and the budget by knowing how long it takes and how many people we need and what tools and equipment we need for each and services for each activity. The benefit of this process, it provides the amount of time each activity will take to complete. This process is performed throughout the project. It's not at one point. So we may need it, during the project when we have more information. We may have to update the durations. We may find that we need less time for any activity, or less resources, or could be more resources for another activity or more time. And these are the two inputs and tools and techniques and output of this activity, and we will talk a little bit about these. So the input to this process, the first one is the project management plan, and the components of it is the schedule management plan, and then the scope baseline. And we talked about this before. The second input is the project documents. So the project documents which are used here are the activity attributes, the activity list, which we did in the second when we defined the activities, and then what assumptions we use. And these assumptions are in the project charter. and also in the project management plan. And what's the lesson learned register? We use the database from previous projects. And then we have also the milestone list, which is mentioned in the project charter, and the team assignments, and resource breakdown structure, how we break down our resources, and resource calendars. When are these resources are available? Because you cannot have some of the resources all the time. So you have calendar for each resource when this resource is available. And resources, I mean as people and tools and services. So all the resources are, we should have a calendar for these resources. And the last one is the risk register from the project document. And we know what risks are there and when we need to take care of them. The third input is the enterprise environmental factors, and we talked about this before. And the fourth one is the organizational process assets. And as we said before, every organization has its own environmental factors and organizational process assets. The tools and techniques used here are the expert judgment, and we talked about this, and then the analogous estimating, parametric estimating, 3-point estimating, bottom-up estimating, and we will talk about these estimating techniques in a separate presentation because they need its own presentation. And also, I advise everyone to read about these techniques because estimating is very important in each project. How to estimate the duration, resources, needs, cost estimates, and so on. And then the sixth tool and technique is the data analysis, and part of it is the alternative analysis. We talked about this before, and reserve analysis. And also we use the decision making by voting. The project manager use this technique with his team to vote on, to ask them this duration, it may need 6 days. So who agrees on this? Or it may need 3 days. Who agrees and who doesn't agree to this estimate? And the last one is the meetings, and we talked about this also before. The output of this process, the first one is the duration estimates. So now we know each activity, how much it will take to complete. The second one, what are the bases of estimates? Also, this is the output of this process, and also the output is to update some of the documents. And these documents which need to be updated could be or need to be updated are the activity attributes, assumption log, and lesson learned register. We may need to update some of these documents. The fifth process is the develop the schedule. So all the work we did, the result of that is to develop the schedule of the project. So the definition of this process, it is the process of analyzing activity sequences, durations, resource requirements, and schedule constraints to create a schedule model for project execution and monitoring and controlling. So the result is a schedule in which we use for project execution, monitoring and controlling. So the benefit of this process, it generates a schedule model with planned dates for completing project activities. This process is performed throughout the project. So we may do it anytime during the project. The inputs and tools and techniques and output are depicted in this figure. And really, I'm not going to talk in detail about these inputs and techniques. So the inputs are the project management plan and the project documents. And these project documents, which are used here, are the activity attributes, activity list, assumption log, lesson learned register, milestone list, basis of estimates, project schedule network, and resource calendars, team assignments, risk register, team assignments, and resource requirements. The third one is the agreements and contracts with vendors, because every vendor and contractor has its own or his own schedule, of course, and this schedule has to be approved by the owner. So we need these schedules as input to our main schedule. The fourth one is the enterprise environmental factors, and the fifth one is the organizational process assets. The tools and techniques, schedule network analysis, critical path method, and resource decomposition, resource optimization, and data analysis. And these techniques, which are used here, what-if scenario analysis and simulation. And also the tools and technique used here, leads and lags, and schedule compression, and project management information system, and the agile release planning. What are the output of this process? This is very important. The output is the schedule baseline. Here we are, we have the baseline. We have to stick to it and do our project according to this baseline, and we cannot change it unless it is approved by all parties. And then the project schedule. This is the output. Here we are, we have the schedule, and we have the baseline, and we have the project schedule. The schedule data. So schedule data are the durations, resources, and so on. Project calendars, when every person and tool and service and so on is available. Change request. We may do some change request according to the changes in the schedule. And the other one, the sixth one, the project management updates. We may need to update the schedule management plan and also the cost baseline. According to all this work, we may need to update the cost of the project. The last one is the project documents updates, and we may need to update the activity attributes, assumption log, duration estimates, lesson learned register, and resource requirements and risk register. The last process is the control schedule. Okay, so we identify duration, we produce and develop the schedule. Now we need to control the schedule. And this is the last section. So the definition of this process is, it is the process of monitoring the status of the project to update the project schedule and manage changes to the schedule baseline. Therefore, we need to update the project schedule and update the schedule baseline. The key benefit of this process is that the schedule baseline is maintained throughout the project. And the baseline cannot be changed unless it is approved by and agreed upon by all parties. This process is performed throughout the project, and the inputs, tools, and techniques are shown in this figure. On the next slide, it shows these inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. And I'm not going to go into detail on these. Um, and I'd like you to, to read more about these in the literature and, search in the internet on these tools and techniques. So I know this presentation has taken a bit, a long time, and because it's very important to define the schedule of the project and to manage it and control the schedule by the project manager and the team. I hope this is helpful, and we hope to see you in the next presentations. And thank you very much, and see you again.